Welcome back to Legends May Live. I'm Drew, and today's story is about a case that would baffle investigators and draw interest worldwide. A tale of mystery, science, and the supernatural, with no clear beginning and no known end. A brief note before we get started. All of our episodes are based on true or allegedly true stories. Some gaps may be filled in here or there. There may be conflicting sources, so just take this as a fun experience and not a documentary. One summer, a young boy is hiking a hillside in Niterói, Brazil. As he starts to come over a ridge, something catches his eye. Two figures lying in the grass, still as stone. Curious what they're doing, he makes his way over, and when he gets close, what he found would lead to questions of conspiracy, paranormal, and unusual science. On August 20th, 1966, it was a warm afternoon in Niterói. 14-year-old Mateus was enjoying the quiet, breezy Saturday. He was looking for the perfect spot to fly his kite. He had spent a lot of time outdoors, and he decided the best place to look was around the hillside of Morro de Vintien. As he pushed his way through the overgrown brush, heading toward the clearing that he remembered up ahead, he gets this kind of eerie feeling. He looks around thinking maybe there's a snake or spider or just some kind of predator watching him, but he doesn't see anything, so he just shakes it off and pushes on through. But as he makes his way into the clearing, he sees something not far in the distance lying in the grass. At first, he can't tell what it is, but it kind of looks like two people. But something's a little off about them. He decides to see if he can get a closer look, and as he's getting closer and closer, he can start to see something really bizarre. It's two people, but they're not moving. They're dressed in dark suits and what looks like some kind of long waterproof coat. They both had hand-cut visor made out of lead, like what you see being used as a shield against radiation covering their eyes. And right away he can tell that something is horribly wrong. He didn't know what it was, but it was just too strange, and he had this overwhelming feeling that he was in danger. He immediately turns and sprints back as fast as he can, and when he gets to the other side of the brush, he turns and goes straight home. And when he arrives, his father's the first person that he sees, and his dad just notices him being all worked up and asks, well, what happened? What's wrong? So Mateus tells him everything he saw, and his dad did think it was pretty weird, but it didn't necessarily seem dangerous. Still, he called the police, and they agreed to send someone out to investigate. Police arrived within hours of Mateus finding the men, and they quickly were able to determine that these men were dead. But how they died isn't nearly as clear. There's no blood or obvious signs of injury. At first glance, this whole thing just looks like some kind of weird ritual straight out of a movie. You've got these two adult men, they're neat, composed, strangely calm in death, and their hands are folded over their chests, not to mention these weird lead masks. And neither of the men have any sort of identification on them. So the officers look around, and nearby they find a few scattered items. A nearly empty water bottle, two towels. They're damp but neatly folded. And there's a small notebook. And inside the notebook, a single page catches their attention. It had this weird message. 1630, be at the agreed place. 1830, ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals, await signal, mask. And that was it. It was just somewhat cryptic and mechanical-like instructions, or maybe something for a machine. Who wrote it and why the lead masks? None of this made any sense to investigators. Within 2 days, the bodies are identified, and they were Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, two men from the town of Campos dos Goytacazes, over 170 miles away. They're repairmen known for their technical skills and their deep interest in spiritualist groups and strange sciences. It would seem that whatever brought them to this hillside wasn't random. But this revelation was only the beginning. 2 days before their bodies were found, Manuel and Miguel told their wives that they were going to be heading to Sao Paulo for a short business trip, and that it really shouldn't be more than a day or two. But when they left, they didn't go to Sao Paulo. Instead, they traveled to Niterói, a completely different direction. They had bought a one-way bus ticket to Niterói, but oddly enough, they also bought return tickets. Along the way, they made a couple of unusual stops. At a local clothing store, they bought matching waterproof trench coats. And then they walked into another shop and grabbed a 1-liter bottle of mineral water. Some say they also grabbed some electronics, but it's uncertain. So when they got to the counter to pay for this water bottle, the checkout clerk noticed one of the men looked down at his wristwatch and made a note. And normally, it wouldn't have been anything to take note of. It wouldn't have been anything the clerk noticed. But these guys both seemed really anxious and hurried, like they were on a tight schedule, and their behavior just kind of stuck with him. So after they paid for the water bottle, they turned and walked out of the store, and then just vanished. They weren't seen again until August 20th, when they were found on the Vintem Hill. By this time, they had been lying out there in the open, untouched, decomposing under the sun. Their time of death is estimated to be within 24 to 36 hours of when the bodies were found, but no one saw them climb that hill or how they died. Back in Campos dos Goitacazes, police began digging into their past. They learned that both men were technicians, TV repairmen with a strong grasp of electronics. But they also had a deep fascination with the occult, metaphysics, and spiritual energy. One local group made up of amateur scientists and mystics reportedly believed that under the right conditions, they could contact beings from beyond, and not just spirits. Some believed that they were able to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligences. Others claimed that they could manifest blinding lights and feel an overwhelming energy course through their bodies. Both Miguel and Manuel were known to experiment with those ideas. In fact, this wasn't even their first time. Months earlier, a friend of theirs had been hospitalized after a failed experiment. He claimed to have seen a blinding light, then collapsed, disoriented, and incoherent. Later, he admitted that they were testing a device to receive messages, but he wouldn't say from who. So now police started asking themselves the hard questions. Were these men performing another experiment? What were they hoping to see or hear? And what was in the capsules? But the answers come slowly, and not all of them are helpful. The coroner's report reveals no clear signs of trauma or foul play, but it doesn't reveal the cause of death either. And the reason? Well, the autopsies were delayed by several days after the bodies were found. This was partly due to jurisdictional or bureaucratic holdups. So because of that, the internal organs, the heart, liver, stomach, they had decomposed too much, and the toxicology report was impossible to run. So now no one could say what was in those capsules. Whatever they ingested is gone along with any answers. But there's one more wrinkle. An unidentified man is mentioned in several witness accounts. He was reportedly seen outside a bar near a restaurant in Niterói on August 17th, the same day that Miguel and Manuel arrived in town. Local witnesses, including the bar owner and patrons, described seeing the two men in the company of a third. He was reportedly speaking with Miguel and Manuel, who seemed to be listening intently. All three looked very serious, like this was more related to business or instructions than just old friends catching up. But this third person, who may have given them instructions or the capsules themselves, who was he? Police had no name, no reliable description, and a trail that quickly hit a dead end. The third man was little more than a rumor of someone who knew more than he was willing to say. So now, investigators were left with a grim picture. Two men gone on a mysterious trip, wearing matching coats and lead masks. There's a cryptic note and death without a mark or sound. Was this a ritual? A test? A failed experiment? Or were they trying to escape something, only to find that whatever they were running from had already arrived? As investigators dig deeper, they were left with two big questions. What were the instructions for, and why did these men die? The first theory is the most obvious: suicide. Some believe that Miguel and Manuel willingly took their own lives as part of a spiritualist ritual. The note, the lead masks, the precise timeline, it all points to preparation. But this wasn't a typical suicide. There were no weapons, no signs of poison packaging, no goodbye letters, and no known motive. And perhaps strangest of all, they bought return tickets as if they expected to come back home. But if suicide wasn't the case, then that leads us to theory 2, a metaphysical experiment. Ransom family told police that the men believed in spiritual energy, telepathic contact, and astral projection. They followed obscure manuals and believed that under specific conditions, certain vibrations, times of day, or celestial alignments, that they could reach other planes of existence. The masks may have been a way to protect their eyes from the blinding spiritual light during their experience. The note may be a countdown, step-by-step instructions to prepare the mind and body. And the towels, some believe that they were used to reduce sweating or contain electrical current during the meditation. But the third theory is darker. Some people believe that they were duped, that they were manipulated into performing the ritual by someone they trusted. The third man, who witnesses say Miguel and Manuel were seen talking to outside the bar just hours before their deaths. That person was never found, and some suspect that may have had a hand in giving them the capsules and telling them what to do. Were they part of a scam, an initiation, or just a target for homicide? There's one more theory, one that lives more in the margins, but still refuses to die. Some believe that Miguel and Manuel believed that they were building a communication device, not to talk to spirits, but to talk to something out there. If they were trying to protect metals and await a signal, maybe they were preparing for a moment of contact, one that would never arrive, or worse, one that did, and cost them their lives. Whatever theory you choose, none of them explain everything. Why the precise times in the note? Why ingest unknown capsules in the middle of nowhere? Why prepare with no follow-up plan? And most baffling of all, or at least most frustrating, why leave behind no real evidence of what actually happened, no clear blueprint? Sometimes in mystery, the details create clarity, but here it's like every new detail feels like a trapdoor, a layer of understanding that leads only to more confusion. And still, one truth remains. Miguel and Manuel didn't stumble into death. They walked toward it, prepared, deliberate, eyes covered, waiting for a signal no one else could see. Days turned into weeks. Leads quickly dried up, and the trail went cold. Police interviewed everyone. Friends, family, even spiritualist circles from other cities. They found more rumors than facts. There were whispers of experiments, talk of contact with other realms, but nothing concrete. And the third man, gone, if he ever existed at all. Eventually the case was closed, and the official ruling was cause of death unknown. But the unanswered questions still linger over 50 years later. Why did two men, trained in logic and science, willingly climb a hill to die? Why wear lead masks when no radiation was ever found? Why write a note that sounds more like a ritual than a plan? And what ended their lives? Some believe they experienced a vision. Some think they were testing a device that had failed. Others think they were simply tricked by someone with more sinister plan. But no one knows for sure. There were no drugs recovered, no answers in the autopsy, and ultimately, no closure. Today, Venton Hill is just another overgrown ridge. People walk past it without even realizing where the mystery took place. But for those who know the story, it sticks. The suits, the masks, the waiting. It feels like they were trying to reach something. A force, a signal, a presence. And whether it came or not, we'll never know. So what really happened to Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira de Cruz? Were they dreamers, chasing something just beyond human understanding? Were they victims caught in a deadly manipulation? Or were they pioneers of something no one else could see? The only thing we do know is that whatever they were preparing for, they met it head on, and the world is still watching. Thanks for listening to Legends May Live. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good mystery. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mask ready